The champagne flute trembles slightly in my hand as I watch her lips move on the massive projection screen. My bride-to-be, radiant in her silk robe, whispering poison to my best man. He's so goddamn loyal it's disgusting. Honestly, I'll sign whatever prenup he throws at me. I'll drain his precious trust fund by July and be living in Santorini with my real man while Danny Boy sobs into his yacht pillow. I hear the collective gasps ripple through the grand ballroom of the Langston estate. The crystal chandeliers seem to dim as all eyes shift between the screen, Elise's horrified face, and me, Daniel Trent, the groom in the charcoal tuxedo who hasn't moved a muscle since the slideshow glitched 5 seconds ago. I feel strangely calm as I watch her slap my framed photo on the nightstand, hear their laughter mingling like poison in a chalice we were meant to share today. The footage is grainy but unmistakable. I allow myself a moment to appreciate the symmetry. How 5 minutes ago, everyone watched us kissing under string lights in Venice, and now they're watching the destruction of that very illusion. I've prepared for this moment for weeks, but nothing quite compares to the visceral satisfaction of watching truth cleave through lies. 6 years ago, I met Elise Granger at a charity gala my family's foundation hosted for marine conservation. I was 32, just made partner at my father's investment firm, and determined to prove I was more than just a trust fund kid with a fancy MBA. She was 28, a rising social media personality with an environmental activism angle that seemed refreshingly authentic. "You're Daniel Trent," she'd said, catching me alone by the aquarium display. "The man who convinced 3 oil companies to invest in algae biofuel." I was surprised she knew that. It wasn't the flashiest achievement on my resume, but it was the one I was proudest of. "And you're Elise Granger, the woman who got 50,000 people to clean beaches in a single weekend." Her laugh was crystalline, unrestrained. "Well, I posted about it. The actual heroes are the volunteers." We talked for 3 hours that night, missing the keynote speech and the silent auction. I found myself drawn to her seemingly effortless blend of ambition and compassion. She spoke about ocean conservation with the same passion I felt, but rarely expressed. By our 3rd date, I was smitten. By our 1st anniversary, I had introduced her to my entire network, my parents, who cautiously approved, my sister Caroline, who was more reserved in her judgment, and Ryan Cole, my best friend since prep school and the CFO of my sustainable investment branch. Ryan was newly divorced, bitter, but charismatic as ever. He and Elise took to each other immediately, both extroverts who commanded attention in any room. I built my life around Elise gradually, carefully. I cleared space in my Tribeca penthouse, then eventually moved us to a brownstone in Brooklyn that she preferred. I opened my calendar, my contacts, my projects to her input. When she mentioned wanting to expand her influence, I connected her with brands aligned with our values. When she expressed interest in my work, I brought her into meetings, valuing her perspective. 2 years in, I gave her access to one of my smaller investment accounts. A test of sorts, though I wouldn't have admitted it then. She managed it impressively, showing unexpected financial acumen. Another layer of trust, cemented. Last Christmas, I proposed at her parents' lake house in Vermont. Snow fell in thick, cinematic flakes as I knelt on the dock. Her tears seemed genuine. Her yes sounded like a promise I could take to the bank. "You're the only honest man I've ever known," she whispered that night as we lay in bed. "That's what I love most about you, Danny. You're real in a world of fakes." I believed her. God help me. I believed every word. The first signs were so subtle I nearly convinced myself I was paranoid. Elise began having connectivity issues during our scheduled calls when I traveled for work. Her social media would show her at restaurants I didn't recognize with people whose faces were just out of frame. "A campaign meeting ran late," she'd explain, or "just drinks with the girls from yoga." Then came the password changes on our shared cloud account. When I mentioned it, She laughed it off. The security alert scared me. You know how bad I am with tech stuff. There were unexplained expenses, hotel charges in neighborhoods across town, late-night Ubers, restaurant bills for two at time stamps when she was supposedly having self-care nights. Each time, she had a plausible explanation, delivered with just the right touch of indignation that made me feel small for asking. Do you really think I'd lie to you, Danny? After everything we've built? And Ryan, my brilliant, loyal Ryan, began subtly undermining me at work. Decisions delayed until I was out of town. Clients suddenly hesitant about projects they'd previously endorsed. Small discrepancies in reports that made me look careless. Market fluctuations, he'd say with that crooked smile. Can't predict everything, right, partner? I started noticing how he and Elise texted each other during dinner parties. How she'd touch his arm when laughing at his jokes. How he'd find reasons to call our home when he knew I'd be at the gym. 3 months before the wedding, I hired a private investigator, something I never thought I'd do. The preliminary report landed in my encrypted email with a subject line that simply read, "Confirmation." I didn't open it for 2 days. When I finally did, sitting alone in my office at 3 a.m., the world I'd built shattered like thin ice beneath my feet. The absolute breaking point came 6 weeks before the wedding. I was supposed to be in Singapore, closing a major sustainable development deal. I'd told Elise I'd be gone for 3 days. In reality, I returned the same night, silent as a ghost in my own home. The sounds guided me upstairs. I stood outside our bedroom door, listening to Elise's breathless laughter, Ryan's murmured conspiracies. "He actually wants to put you on the board after you're married," Ryan was saying. "Can you believe that? Daniel thinks you'd be an asset to the company." Poor Danny, Elise sighed dramatically. Always thinking with his heart instead of his head. It's almost too easy. Speaking of easy, did he buy that story about your dying aunt needing money for treatment? Their laughter cut through me like serrated glass. I didn't burst in. I didn't scream or throw things. I simply walked back down the stairs, out the door, and checked into a hotel. That night, as I stared at the ceiling, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just betrayal. It was calculated predation. They weren't just cheating. They were harvesting my trust like a renewable resource. And they thought me too blind, too devoted, too loyal to ever see through them. I called the investigator at dawn. "I need everything," I told him. "Every meeting, every lie, every dollar, and I need surveillance equipment. The best you have." "Mr. Trent," he said carefully, "revenge missions can get messy." "This isn't revenge," I replied, surprised by the coldness in my voice. "This is justice." Planning my response took precision, patience, and help from an unexpected quarter. The investigator's report led me to Camilla Westbrook Cole, Ryan's ex-wife, the woman he'd discarded 2 years earlier for being too boring and not ambitious enough. I found her teaching literature at a private school in Connecticut. Her classroom walls were covered with student projects and quotes from Jane Austen. Nothing about her seemed boring to me. "Mr. Trent," she said when I introduced myself in the empty classroom after hours. "I've been waiting for this visit for quite some time." Camilla, it turned out, had suspected Ryan's affair with Elise even before their divorce was finalized. She'd been gathering evidence, not for alimony, she'd refused any settlement, but for her own peace of mind. "He gaslighted me for months," she explained over coffee. "Made me believe I was paranoid, jealous, unstable. I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy." She handed me a thumb drive. "This isn't about revenge for me anymore. I've moved on, but you deserve to know exactly who you're dealing with." The drive contained emails, text messages, and financial records showing that Ryan had been embezzling from my company for nearly 2 years. More damning were recordings of conversations between him and Elise, planning how to maximize their take from what they called the Daniel Trent gravy train. "I have more," Camilla said quietly. "But before I share it, I need to know what you intend to do with it." I told her my emerging plan. Not a violent confrontation, not a messy scene, but something more definitive. "They think I'm predictable," I explained. "Loyal to a fault, incapable of deception. I want to use that assumption against them." Camilla smiled for the first time since we'd met. "Then I believe I can help you, Mr. Trent." We spent the next month building the perfect trap, with Camilla's steady logic complementing my financial expertise. I continued the wedding preparations as if nothing had changed, playing the oblivious groom-to-be with Oscar-worthy consistency. I met with my attorney to create 2 prenuptial agreements, the real one, ironclad and punitive, and the fake one, which appeared standard but contained subtle legal flaws that would render it worthless in court. I gave Elise the fake one, watching as she signed without proper legal consultation, too eager to secure her position. I privately contacted the Securities and Exchange Commission regarding the discrepancies in my company's books, providing evidence of Ryan's embezzlement while ensuring my own cooperation would minimize any blowback on the firm. I replaced our wedding planner with someone who worked exclusively for me, revising certain elements of the ceremony without Elise's knowledge. I arranged for specific guests, investigative journalists, social media influencers who competed with Elise, potential business partners who'd been hesitant about Ryan, to receive special seating near the main screen. And most crucially, I installed high-definition cameras in our bedroom, our living room, my home office, and Ryan's apartment, gathering weeks of damning footage that I edited into a concise, devastating 7-minute video. All while smiling at Elise over dinner, kissing her goodnight, and telling her how excited I was for our future together. The wedding day dawned perfect. Clear skies, comfortable temperature, flawless execution of all arrangements. The Langston estate gleamed with fresh flowers and elegant drapery. Guests arrived in their finery, cooing over the hand-calligraphed place cards and artisanal cocktails. I greeted everyone with practiced charm, accepting congratulations and well wishes with humble grace. My parents, sensing something amiss but trusting my judgment, played their roles impeccably. Ryan performed his best man duties with nauseating enthusiasm, clapping me on the back and making jokes about my last day of freedom. I smiled and laughed, allowing him his moment in the spotlight. And Elise, she was breathtaking in her designer gown, moving through the pre-ceremony reception like a queen among admirers. Twice, she and Ryan exchanged glances they thought I didn't see. Once, her hand brushed his as she passed, a stolen intimacy that would have broken my heart 6 weeks earlier. Now, it merely confirmed what needed to be done. As guests were seated for the ceremony, the wedding planner, my wedding planner, announced a special video presentation from the groom to his bride. The lights dimmed. The massive screen lit up. For the first 3 minutes, it played exactly as expected. Childhood photos, our meet-cute romantic trips, sweet moments captured for posterity. Elise beamed at the screen, occasionally squeezing my hand or wiping away a theatrical tear. Then, at precisely the moment when the video should have concluded with our engagement photos, the screen flickered. The music cut abruptly. And there they were. Elise and Ryan, in her bedroom, in his car, in my office, plotting, mocking, betraying. Their own words condemning them more thoroughly than any accusation I could make. I watched Elise's face drain of color as her voice echoed throughout the ballroom. "He's so goddamn loyal, it's disgusting." I saw Ryan freeze in his chair beside the altar, his confident facade crumbling as the footage showed him transferring company funds to offshore accounts. I noted her father's wine glass slipping from his fingers, her mother's hand flying to cover her mouth. The rapid shift from shock to scandal to voyeuristic fascination among our 300 guests. And I felt nothing. No pain, no rage, no sorrow. Just the clean, precise satisfaction of a surgeon removing a malignancy. When the video ended, with Elise describing in explicit detail how she planned to divorce me after milking the Trent name for all it's worth. I walked slowly to the microphone placed near the altar. The room was deathly silent. Phones were raised, recording. This was no longer a wedding. It was an execution. "Thank you all for coming to what was supposed to be my wedding," I began, my voice steady and clear. "But I've realized today isn't a beginning, it's a liberation." I gestured to the screen behind me. That footage was filmed by the woman Ryan once discarded, his ex-wife Camilla. She warned me, and together we exposed everything. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Elise took a step toward me, her features contorted in desperate calculation. "Elise never signed a real prenup," I continued. "The one she signed? Completely unenforceable, drafted by my lawyer as bait." I turned toward Ryan, who was now being approached by two men in dark suits who had been posing as ushers. "And Ryan, he's been embezzling from my company for 2 years. Camilla gave us the ledger. The SEC's been watching. Gentlemen?" The agents flashed their badges. Ryan's face collapsed as he was handcuffed and read his rights in front of everyone who mattered in our social and professional circles. "Wait, no, this is a setup," he stammered, looking wildly around for allies and finding none. As he was escorted out, Elise grabbed my arm, her nails digging through my tuxedo sleeve. Her eyes were wild, mascara already beginning to smudge. "Danny, please. I didn't mean any of it. It was just talk. I love you. I stepped back, removing her hand from my arm as if disposing of something unclean. "You love my money. You loved my trust. And you killed both." The crowd parted then, and Camilla walked forward in an emerald dress I'd helped her select, elegant, understated, and devastating in its simplicity. She moved with quiet dignity, nothing like Elise's calculated sensuality. I took her hand and, making my final point with crystal clarity, kissed her gently on the lips. "This," I said, turning to address the stunned room, "is what loyalty looks like." The priest quietly closed his Bible and walked away from the altar. Elise's mother finally overcame her shock and pulled her sobbing daughter aside, but not before I heard her hiss, "How could you be so stupid?" My father approached, adjusting his tie, a nervous habit from my childhood. "Son," he said quietly, "that was either the bravest or most foolish thing I've ever witnessed." I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in months. "Why not both?" The wedding planner, worth every penny of her considerable fee, announced that while the ceremony was canceled, the reception would proceed as planned, courtesy of Mr. Trent's generosity. Free champagne and a scandal, not a single guest left. As Camilla and I moved through the crowd, accepting condolences that felt more like congratulations, I caught sight of Elise being ushered out a side door, her perfect makeup streaked, her designer gown crushed in her mother's desperate grip. Our eyes met for a final moment. I raised my champagne glass in a silent toast. She looked away first. The aftermath was everything I'd anticipated and more. The video, professionally edited to blur the most explicit content while highlighting the betrayal and financial crimes, spread online within hours. My legal team, prepared for this exact scenario, strategically released additional evidence to select journalists, ensuring the narrative remained focused on Elise and Ryan's duplicity rather than my surveillance methods. Elise's carefully cultivated image as an environmental activist and social media darling imploded spectacularly. The brands that had courted her, many through my connections, dropped her within days. Her follower count plummeted, then surged with trolls and scandal seekers. Her comment sections became cesspools of mockery and judgment. She tried damage control, a tearful Instagram video claiming manipulation and emotional abuse from Ryan, an article in a second-tier women's magazine positioning herself as a victim of circumstance. But the unedited recordings I continued to release through anonymous channels torpedoed each attempt at rehabilitation. Her parents, both society elites with reputations to protect, publicly disowned her. The statement from her father, a federal judge with political ambitions, was particularly cutting. "We raised our daughter to understand that character is destiny. She has revealed her character to the world and now must face her destiny alone." I later learned they had quietly removed her from their substantial estate, replacing her with their alma mater's scholarship fund. Ryan fared even worse. Facing multiple federal charges for securities fraud, wire fraud, and tax evasion, he frantically sought deals with prosecutors. With each plea bargain attempt, he implicated Elise more deeply, claiming she had been the architect of schemes to defraud me emotionally while he handled the financial extraction. These betrayals, piled atop their original treachery, drove Elise to a public meltdown at the preliminary hearing. Her screamed accusations and threats required court officers to restrain her, creating courthouse steps footage that ran on financial news networks for days. I pressed civil charges against both of them, emotional fraud against Elise and business sabotage against Ryan, not because I needed the money, but because the proceedings would keep their names linked to scandal for years, poisoning any attempt at rehabilitation. Meanwhile, Camilla emerged as an unexpected public darling. Her quiet dignity, contrasted with Elise's histrionics, captured the public imagination. When a morning show host asked about her relationship with me, she answered with perfect composure. "Daniel and I share an unfortunate experience, betrayal by people we trusted implicitly. That creates a bond, certainly. But more importantly, we both believe in consequences for calculated cruelty. The foundation we launched together, supporting therapeutic programs for survivors of relationship fraud and financial abuse, received substantial donations and media coverage. The irony wasn't lost on me. Elise had wanted to use my name to elevate her profile, and now another woman was doing exactly that, with my enthusiastic blessing. As for me, I rebuilt. I restructured my company, implementing tighter financial controls while promoting loyal employees who had questioned Ryan's decisions. I sold the Brooklyn brownstone and returned to Manhattan, this time to a West Village townhouse with a garden Camilla helped design. I received one email from Elise, 3 months after what the tabloids were still calling the slideshow massacre. The subject line read simply, "Please just talk to me." I never opened it. Some communications require no response. The last I heard of her, 6 months later, came via a former colleague who spotted her at a dive bar in Manhattan's Lower East Side. Apparently, she'd been screaming at the bartender, drunk and disheveled, about how she almost had everything. She did. She almost had my name, my resources, my trust, my life. Instead, she has infamy, isolation, and the knowledge that her own cleverness was ultimately her undoing. She thought she was conning a fool blinded by love. Instead, she taught a good man to see clearly and act decisively. Ryan will serve between 4 and 7 years in federal prison, depending on his continued cooperation. His legal fees have already forced the sale of his Hampton house and his collection of rare watches. His reputation in financial circles is beyond salvage. As for Camilla and me, we're taking things slowly, building a connection based on shared values rather than performance or pretense. I don't know if what we have is love yet, but it's honest. After what we've both endured, that honesty feels more precious than any more dramatic emotion. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I wonder if I went too far. If public humiliation and financial ruin were disproportionate consequences for infidelity and planned theft. If I could have simply walked away, divorced quietly, and preserved some dignity for all involved. Then I remember Elise's voice, cruel and calculating. "He's so goddamn loyal, it's disgusting." And I smile, knowing that my loyalty now belongs exclusively to those who've earned it, and to the man in the mirror who finally learned its true value. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.